I've been told 5 minutes has passed, so we need to,
Southern 5 minutes.
Southern time.
Southern time, I ain't talking about that yet.
Look, when I came to Wilmington, I discovered that start times were suggestions.
Okay, item D, project Lead the Way, Appendix D, Dr. Smith.
All right, as Dr. Smith is coming forward, just a little background. Project Lead the Way is a national engineering program that we brought to our county a little over a year ago, and it was brought to us in the cooperation with the Chamber of Commerce. And they are here tonight. Ms. Connie Majorette is with the Chamber, and the board chambers. Mr. Hal Kitchens is here, and so I want to publicly thank them. By the time we finish up the third year of this project, they will have given almost $75,000 to the implementation of this program.
Thank you.
And this program is now starting to move out from Trask, its original school, to Virgo is our second school that will be picking up Project Lead the Way.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Markley. As Dr. Markley shared with you, you're going to hear highlights tonight regarding the implementation of Project Lead the Way at Trask Middle School. We've got the principal of Trask Middle School, Ms. Sharon Deschamps. She's going to bring that presentation to you that will point out the wonderful work that's happening with this collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce. So, Mr. Deschamps.
And you guys have already seen this PowerPoint, so just bear with me, but the board is interested in just to give them some highlights of how wonderful the program is and how much we appreciate the efforts over the last couple of years, and as we move into that implementation for our third year. Thanks to Barbara Usry, who put together the PowerPoint that she presented. We did some number crunching and some sharing of some things. One of the things that we do know is, science and technology, and I know you were talking about the National Conference of the Robotics. These kids are just totally enthralled into this program. Not too many times do you see students who give up their social time at lunch to go to a classroom to work. This is the case. In fact, I would build a whole entire school around this concept if we could afford it. Through the slide presentation, you're going to see some quotes from some of the students, and we'll just go to the 6th and 7th grade program. We'll be adding the 8th grade programs next year. Do I control this, or okay? So we've got, if we can go on to the programs themselves, and then I'm going to show you some data from some of the surveys that we did with the students. In 6th grade, they have the design and modeling, and pictures of what you're seeing is actually student work. These are 6th graders. They're learning to use programs that some of our students are not introduced to until in high school, in some of the design CAD programs. The finances from the chamber, helped us to purchase those programs. Laptops that I really think could probably run the space shuttle, and all the equipment. So they have the design and modeling using the Autodesk, automation and robotics. And in 7th grade, they have the science of technology and the magic of electrons. Now, what's so great about these programs is there's some integration of the course of study for science in 6th and 7th grade embedded into Project Lead the Way. And next year, we're really excited. One of my favorites is coming up. They're going to be adding flight and space. And then medical detectives. That's going to be my favorite. I think I'll probably spend a lot of time in those classrooms. And another good thing about some of these is Laney has some cohort things that they're going to be starting in STEM. But this is going to flow right into our feeder high school. So we put together some data just to kind of show you the impact that this has had on the students in the program. Just to give you an idea, a lot of these students are making the honor roll. 6th graders, first 9 weeks, 100% of them made the honor roll. Second 9 weeks, 95%. You can read through those numbers. And then we go.
This is not a class full of AIG kids. This is
No.
typical average sixth graders.
These are students, now, criteria is they do have to perform well in math and science, and they have to be very self-motivated. The cohorts that started last year are now seventh graders, and we can take up to 50 in each grade level. There's 25 and 25 going year-round. And it's a commitment for a whole entire year. We've had some students that have actually, one parent said they were going to move, and the student said, "You can't move. I've got to stay there through 8th grade because we're getting, a year of Project Lead the Way." And then we have attendance. A lot of the students, they don't want to miss school because they're going to miss this class.
3.5% translates to about 96.5 attendance rate. That's probably 3 points better than the average overall school attendance rate.
That's good. That's really good.
Discipline is not an issue. Of course, if you know Coach Leak, he's 6'3", and his expectations for his students academically in the classroom and outside of his classroom are way up here, and they don't want to make him unhappy. So this is also a good program because we do have an awesome teacher in there in that classroom. Here are some questions. This is the part that I love the most. The students, what we found is 67% of them saying taking the class has sparked their interest in a future career in science, technology, and math. And that's huge to know that over half of the students that have started in that program are thinking about going into a career in that area. And those are good paying jobs. And that's where a lot of our students, the future holds for them, is to move in that direction. 23% already had a mindset in that area. Almost 89% of them feel like it has had a positive impact in their academic performance in their other classes. It's not just going there and tinker around with bits and pieces of robots and this, that, and the other. These students are having to do research, writing components. It's basically cross-curriculum, presentation, having to work in cohorts, in groups, cooperative learning teams to make their projects work, which is another thing that's really big. If we've looked at some of the studies over the past few years, businesses will tell us that cooperative teamwork is one of the things that they feel like we need to be working on in the school systems with our students. Do you feel that participating in Project Lead the Way has an impact on your attendance? Almost 61%. They don't want to miss school.
I love the quote on this one.
Yeah, I love this class so much. And then we just wanted to find out why did they choose it as an elective. Of course, most of them, the description sparked their interest. And now we have students beating down the door, wanting to get into the classroom. We got a future robotic engineer too, so. I enjoy school more because I'm in Project Lead the Way. Almost 91%. That's phenomenal. And, about 91% of them would recommend it to other students. And here's just some quotes. I'll just let you take a minute to read through some of those. Made life better.
I like the last one. I can fix the stuff that's broken at my house better. That's a benefit for the parents too.
And there's just some pictures, just some of the phenomenal work that these kids do. And I welcome any of you to come by. Just email me so I can let you know, because he doesn't teach a full day just yet. You're more than welcome to come by and look at some of the things that they're doing in this classroom. And that's all because of the efforts of Chamber and for Dr. Markley allowing me to pester him to death when I heard about it, saying, I want it. So, again, thank you.
what time is the class?
We don't have a first thing in the morning. They have during their 6th and 7th grade elective. He starts teaching about 11:48, 11:50, and then he's pretty much teaching through the rest of the day.
Dr. Smith, is this similar to, I think it's General Electric that partnered with Freeman, because they were doing robotics. The engineers from GE were going over there and working, is that, and they were building the cars and everything associated with it?
Yes, this is a more comprehensive curriculum. This is actually a national curriculum. And also, as Dr. Markley said earlier, a part of our CTE program. What they were working with at GE were more enhancements and supplements to the existing curriculum.
Coach Leak has to go to a 2-week training session every summer in order to add new curriculum each year. So this coming summer, in order to add the 8th grade curriculum, he'll have to go to 2 weeks of training. And again, that has all been funded through what the chamber has done.
My question is, when you started this, we didn't have it in place, and you decided to go down the path. Other than the training of the teacher, were there things that were brought in to enhance what you did, or was it created based on his training?
Since the national program, you have to go to training in order to be certified.
Okay.
And in that training, for each one of those that you take on, each one of those curriculums you take on, they show you the things that you're going to need, the material and the curriculum. We also have access to their website.
He came back from the summer with basically a shopping list,
Yes.
which we then handed to the chamber.
So in essence, the chamber paid for the training, paid for the props,
Yep.
and laptops, okay. So, and that's 77,000 to date, what you've put in.
Is there an annual fee or subscription or to the national program, Dr. Smith? You look like you were going to answer that question.
No, there's not.
Okay.
The additional costs come from the additional training and the additional modules that we've added. The greatest cost at this point comes from the consumables, but there is not a subscription fee or a licensing fee for the program.
Okay, so could we then use what we've learned in terms of, and expand this at the school level and then outward, or?
That's the plan. That's why next, Eric at Virgo is picking it up next. And then, because the teacher right now is an add-on to the regular allotment, so that's something we have to fund locally. So for every elementary school, you're looking at a teacher cost plus the equipment cost. So it's about $75,000 a year for that first 3 years. After that, then it's simply the teacher cost and then and the consumables part of it. So it's, to do it district-wide is not, it's not cheap. But the idea was to try it at Trask to see if there was interest and if it's a program that could work. And obviously, we've seen there that it's a great program, and it's one that we'd then like to be looking at adding a school probably every year.
So are you saying it's $75,000 per school?
Yeah, because you got to pay for the teacher, which is usually above the allotment. I got to send them to the 2 weeks of summer training, and I've got to equip the lab.
And we're anticipating doing this countywide on the middle school level, but she was talking about the elementary level.
This is a middle school program, and there are some high school
She said
components.
something about middle school, elementary.
No, well, I had asked about Freeman,
Okay,
the robotics
sorry.
program they have over there that.
And Sharon,
Yeah, but
so they can pick you up, you need to be behind the mic.
yeah, but
I'm trying to use my coach's voice.
the benefit in terms of the additional proficiency that you get from the math courses, because as we've talked about this before, the practical application of those math, the math subject matter is just sort of reinforces that learning process. So it doesn't just benefit it benefits the whole school, I guess you could say.
Well, and being a former math teacher and also working at the high school and watching some of the science, they're being exposed to some of the basic high school curriculum for science. For an example, when they're doing circuits, one of the things that I really have never understood, but I do know that they study circuits in physics in high school, and these students are already being exposed to that and actually hands-on having to build circuits, understanding the physics behind gears and pulleys and things of that nature. Again, it's very physics-based.
I mean, if you had this an example at Murray, those kids would roll into the Ashley Computer Science program as just a natural progression as the next step.
The only complaint that I would have would be that you started this a year too late for my boys to take advantage of it.
And I've heard that
So-
complaint several times.
But there's
So
a
I
talented
wasn't happy about-
musician. I
I'm
don't
sorry?
know that one would have given up the orchestra for it, though.
Oh, well, no, we have to
Yeah.
talk then, yeah.
Is there any downside from your point of view?
None whatsoever. The only downside is I could use 2 of these. I could fill up 2 sections for each grade level, probably 3. It's been an awesome program. It's been one of the most exciting things, in my opinion, going on at Trask the last couple of years. So, and again, very appreciative to the chamber.
Connie, Hal, anything you'd like to add from the chamber side?
No, other than I'll just point out that our plan all along, and this is Wilmington Chamber plus Cape Fear Future. So that's our flagship initiative, and we've got 3 focus areas, and STEM education is one of them. And our plan all along was to try to sort of let the school system take this out for a test drive, see whether you like it or not, whether you thought you were getting good results, and then hopefully, if it turned out to be a good thing, which I think it has, have you guys look at the possibility of rolling it out system-wide. So we're enthused with the fact that that's something we're taking a look at, and of course, we're totally in favor of it, and we'd love to see it in every middle school as soon as possible.
And I'll also send you a link. Your school system made a video of the kids the first year last year, and I don't know if you've seen that, but I'll send you a link to the video. It was astounding to me. This is a very diverse class. It's not all grades in school, and just to listen to the excitement, not only from the kids, but from the parents, it was overwhelming. We took our leadership
Garrett's
out
coming
to
online.
watch for a couple
We're gonna have the
hours,
middle school
and it
online.
was a great experience. They are really getting something back. The bang is definitely there for us.
And Ms. Deschamps, please tell your students how much we enjoyed their comments and certainly their endeavor to learn and
They're
the
very
attendance.
excited. Again, I don't know, they go in there at lunch. They're in there working and eating at the same time.
That's
It just-
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have found a home for the vast amount of money that's gonna be made from App City. We have found a place to put those funds, because this is a very dynamic
Yes.
program. I don't think anybody can deny that.
All right.
Any other questions for me?
Thank you very much, and thank you.
you.
Item E, DC Virgo Preparatory Academy update and year-round calendar proposal. Appendix E, Dr. Markley.
I'm going to actually turn this over to now Dr. Irizarry, who recently completed his doctorate. Congratulations.
Yes.
We took a chance 3 years ago when we closed the school, and we promised the community we would reopen that school. And we have. And we chose somebody from across the river at one of our local charter schools to be the principal, Dr. Irizarry. And he has been through 3 years of some very interesting growing pains. But I am excited about his first class that's coming out this year. He had probably the largest percentage of kids accepted to early college of any middle school. And has had some great numbers and had some challenges, which we will. But he's going to give a little overview of where they're at, talk to you about where they're going, and then make a request that'll be on next month's agenda as an action item. Dr. Irizarry.
Good evening, everyone. Just want to give an update on DC Virgo right now. Thanks for having us here. DC Virgo, this is our 3rd year. So our 8th graders started with us as 126 graders. As Dr. Markley said, we have 15 of our students going to either Wilmington Early College or Isaac Bayer, and we just found out today that we have another student going to Cape Fear on a full ride scholarship. So we have a lot of exciting things going on at DC Virgo. We did meet growth last year. That's exciting. It's always about growth with our students. The data this year shows great growth in the benchmarks for the county. And we're continuing to partner with the community, and that's been a big strength of DC Virgo. Currently, through our enrichment program and through our partners with the Blue Ribbon Commission, we have over 26 different individuals and organizations from the community involved in Virgo on a weekly basis. So we feel that's one of our strengths moving forward. We're going to continue to work with the Blue Ribbon Commission to provide summer programming along with the Bell program, Building Educated Leaders for Life. And we supplement that with the Title I summer program. And we're able to provide our students with 5 weeks of additional enriching activities and academic activities during the summer. And that was 100 students last year, so that was over half of my students were involved in academic programs during the summer for 5 weeks. So they were in a safe, nurturing environment. That was the last one. Next year, what's the vision for Virgo? It's continuing growth on the end of grade tests. We're here to educate students. Reading, math, and science are core subjects. That's where we're headed. We're going to provide additional enrichment programs. Our enrichment programs happen every Friday. We bring in those community partners. We have partnerships with Dreams, Kids Making It, First Tee. It's a way for our students to just build social and cultural capital. A lot of my students don't have access to some of these programs, a lot of these camps that a lot of students in other parts of the county have access to. So we bring those programs into the school to provide those enriching opportunities. You heard a lot about Project Lead the Way from Trask. It's a great program. We started our program this year. We have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students in the STEM program. PPD is working right now to convert our old wood shop into our PPD learning lab. So right now we're working on getting the paint ready. The CTE department has supplied our computers and our training for our Project Lead the Way teacher as well. So we're excited to see that program grow and all the success that Trask has had with that program. Moving forward. So why year-round? Summer learning loss is a huge factor, and it's a huge factor for schools that serve high percentages of low-income students. Summer learning loss is I have a video to kind of just put that into perspective, but summer learning loss occurs over that 2.5 months off the kids have during the summertime. Intersession opportunities in the year-round schedule provide enrichment opportunities for our students, and also supplemental activities for some of our students that are maybe behind grade level, give them a chance to catch up during those intersessions. And for our students that are ahead of grade level, some of our early college kids, let's give them an opportunity to excel, because it's always about growth with our kids, whether you're on either end of the spectrum. Third, the year-round calendar provide an alternative to the traditional calendar. You guys approved Snipes last month. We're going to have Snipes. Sunset Park's going to go to a year-round next year, and we also have Eaton and Coddington that are traditional year-round or a year-round calendar right now. There's no middle school that's on a year-round calendar, so where do those kids go? I think that'll give our county an option for those parents that have kids in elementary year-round schools. This is just a quick video on summer learning loss.
During their year in kindergarten, and
explain summer learning loss gives you a visual on some of the obstacles that a lot of my students are facing. If we can shrink that summer, which the year-round calendar does, that provides, instead of 2.5 months off in the summertime, they only have 5 weeks off in the summertime. I thought someone was speaking. I'm okay. The summer will be shortened to about 5 weeks. Like I said, the Bell program, and I'll talk a little bit more about the Bell program, it was a 5-week program. Our Title I program was a 5-week program. If I can shrink my summer to about 5 weeks, I'll still offer that program to our students with our partnerships. And really, a lot of our students that will take advantage of the intersessions and the summer, I can have kids in the school building, instead of 185 days, I can push that to 205 days or more. And what the data shows is when the kids are with my teachers, and they're excellent teachers, they're working hard, they grow while they're in front of our teachers here in the county. The problem is that 2.5 months off, that's a long time to recover. A lot of our first quarter is spent catching our students up. It's reviewing material from the previous year. So when you do that for the first quarter, you only really have 3 quarters to work with to learn that new material. And the new Common Core, it's a beast. It's very difficult. So it would shorten that time that we have to review those skills. The intersessions would allow time for remediation and enrichment opportunities. 9 weeks, we participate in the short cycle assessment pilot program with the county. Our students take a benchmark 4 times a year, and we have mini benchmarks between those 2 benchmarks. After that after the 9 weeks that we take their benchmarks, immediately we could see which kids need help in which areas, and that 3-week break, we can design our instructional program to really just target those students, bring them in to really target and differentiate the instruction during that 3-week break. So hopefully when they come back for that next quarter, we've addressed some of those gaps they've already had. Shorter summers will reduce the need for costly childcare during the summer months. Most of my students come from the north side. If you've been in the north side, you know that it's a resource desert. There's not a community center there. There's very few organizations. You have Community Boys and Girls Club, Dreams, and the BRC is working to bring some resources into that area. 2.5 months off is a lot of time off in the summertime. You have a lot of 12 and 13-year-olds, and they're impressionable. They're looking for things to do. And, it could be positive, nurturing, at Virgo or with our partners. And sometimes they go the other route, and, they get involved in some of the community events that maybe aren't so positive. So the more I can keep the kids in my building and in positive organizations, I think the better off we'll be and the county will be in the long run. This is just a few of our pictures. The Blue Ribbon Commission, the BRC is our biggest partner. Their role is really to provide some networking of organizations. We have great organizations in this community. Their job is to network them and bring them to the school, to the kids that need it the most. So what will the intersession and summer vision? We'll still partner with the BRC to bring those enrichments into the summer. And into the intersessions. Right now, it's every Friday afternoon. What I would do is look at bringing those into those 3-week intersessions, and we could have a STEM camp at DC Virgo, focus on math and reading skills. Intersessions will be driven by data-driven, by student data. Like I said, instantly we'll know which kids need help in which areas, and we can address those during those 3-week intersessions. And the enrichment opportunities in the school and in the community. For some of our 8th graders, some of our STEM kids, they've already taken field trips to PPD. They've taken field trips to the Army Corps of Engineers. We could set up mini internships or just, ways for our students to be exposed to careers in the science and technology field. The BRC, they piloted a Bell program, and that's a national program. It's called Building Educational Leaders for Life. And what we did was we partnered with our community organizations to do a hybrid. Bell was instructional, it was math and reading. The mornings were math and reading focused. We used Title I. DC Virgo is a feeding site, so with Eimer and Ms. Jackson in the Title I department, what we did, we were able to provide our students with breakfast and lunch. In the morning, they had math and reading, and in the afternoons, they were partnered with different organizations, Kids Making It and Dreams, and they were able to extend on some of those enrichment opportunities. The data from the Bell program was promising. We had 65 scholars. We focused on 6th through 7th grade, 130 hours of summer learning. We had a high attendance rate, 91% in the summertime for kids going to math and reading programs. That's huge. Our students gained about 2 months in reading and 2.4 months for some of our struggling math students. That's huge. When we talk about that achievement gap and we talk about summer learning loss, what this pilot program showed with a small amount of our students is that if they're in those environments, we can stop that summer learning loss. And eventually, hopefully, throughout the years, catch those students up before they get to MAC over at New Hanover. Again, surveys, 96% of the teachers reported that they're increased in self-confidence, and 100% of the parents liked it. When I talk to the parents, the number one thing they tell myself and Mr. Pollack and Ms. Janet Jones from the BRC is, we need things in the summertime. We need programs for the summertime. So, our job is to try to provide those. We have a building at DC Virgo, and my job is to kind of keep those programs happening. The year-round calendar will reduce the amount of summertime that we need to find programming. It'll also have positive impact. The 3-week intersessions will have a positive impact on our staff as well. One of the biggest areas for improvement, when we look at our school calendar, it's hard. We don't have a lot of professional development days. Using that intersession will allow me to bring in some professional development on a volunteer basis, bring some of my teachers back on some of the initiatives that we're working on at our schools. It'll decrease teacher burnout. I was a principal at a year-round school. When I talk to some of the teachers at our current year-round schools, going on a 3-week break right before EOGs is wonderful. It gives us teachers enough time to reflect, get themselves together before that push, before the end of the year. The year-round schedule will also have the media center, our PPD parent room, and the computer lab. They'll be open because the school will be open. So that allows our parents and our students more access to the facilities that we have at DC Virgo. Like I spoke, the alternative. A lot of our elementary schools are looking at the year-round model. We don't have a middle school that's going to a year-round model. DC Virgo, I think, we're at that point in our development right now. We're still a small school, about 280 kids. We can shift a lot quicker than some of our larger middle schools and complement and hopefully draw some students in from some of our other areas in the district.
And you heard one of the things about parents looking for summer childcare. This would match up calendars for those Snipes parents with the students when they go into middle school, which would alleviate some of those concerns.
And we saw that. I think it's on one of my slides, but we tried last year. The school improvement team really wanted to move to the year-round model last year. The problem is Snipes is our biggest feeder school, and it's probably on there. More support occurred after Snipes. Once you guys approved Snipes, my phone started ringing. Hey, are you guys thinking about going to year-round? My kids are going to be on 2 different schedules. This kind of eliminates that. Snipes is our biggest feeder school, and I think that will help some of our families that may find it a struggle being on 2 different calendars. 100% of my SIT team voted yes for the year-round, and so we continued those conversations during the summertime. We held a lot of forums. Really wanted the parents to come in, tell me what you think about year-round. Year-round's kind of deceiving because technically it's not really a year-round, it's a modified calendar. Once the kids stopped hyperventilating that they were going to be in school all year round. They like the program, being out for 3 weeks, just being on a different schedule. The kids liked it. So we had coffees with the principals, parent nights, monthly flyers, brochures, and we were able to get that input from the parents. The original, we did paper and pencil surveys and phone surveys. We had about 65 to 70% of our parents were for it. What I did was the parents that weren't for it, I invited them in personally, and we had sometimes one-to-one discussions about the benefits of year-round schools. I had my parent liaison call families individually as well, explain the benefits of year-round schools, and the results, of our respondents, 80% of the respondents voted yes for moving to year-round schools.
What was your percentage of participation?
We had about 60% of our parents.
And I will tell you, you would think that with a small school, getting a hold of parents would be no problem. Probably one of his biggest challenges there is getting a parent to have that conversation with. So to get 60% of his parents to actually respond has taken him almost a year of effort tracking down those parents.
And we concentrated on the sixth grade, because sixth grade would be the only grade level right now in my school that would be affected. I knew what Snipes parents wanted. And so we really concentrated on our sixth grade parents, and we didn't have a lot of no's. We had some parents that just didn't really respond either way. It was really hard to get a yes or no, but overwhelmingly yes. And that's where we are. That's a picture of our 15 students going to early college. You can tell it's a very diverse group. I'm very proud of them. And I think as we move Virgo and Virgo further develops, I think a year-round schedule will be a benefit for our kids.
What's your demographics in school? Racially.
Racially, we're about 96% African American, 3 to 4% mixed, and then somewhere in that area. It fluctuates.
And we reduced lunch rate.
100%.
What's the downside to what you're proposing?
When I talk to the parents, it always goes back to childcare. Childcare during those breaks. One of the biggest obstacles last year was a lot of my middle school students watch younger kids during the summertime. So when I talk to parents and I ask them, hey, why wouldn't you support this? And really, if Virgo were to go to a year-round without Snipes, a lot of my parents wouldn't have the child support, the child care, because a lot of my kids are responsible for some of my kids.
I think that generally is the biggest downside. I don't think academically or any other way you could look at it, that there's a downside. But that generally is what comes up. And like you say, with Snipes, and both being on a year-round.
But I feel with our partnerships with the BRC and also our partnerships in the community, Community Boys and Girls is right next door. And during the daytime, during the school year, they don't have anyone in their building. Dreams doesn't have anyone in their building during that school year. So what we're doing is we're starting those conversations with our community members. Brigade doesn't have anyone during the school year. So partnering with them to work out some options for our families that don't have kids that are going to those intersections.
Dr. Markley, are there any other middle schools considering going to year-round?
Now, when we talked about this to principals in 2015, generally, Eric was the only school that really said it makes sense for us. And then when Snipes made that decision in Sunset Park, it really is logical then for him to go year-round. If you remember, we surveyed about 4 year-rounds probably 3 years ago. And there was a lot of support for year-round until you got specific. And then when we said we'd like to do it, we did the survey and we asked where, once we identified a location, support went from about 50% support down to about 20% support. So it's real interesting that in a broad sense, folks like the concept, but when it gets to the specifics, that's when it becomes much more difficult. I really like this concept, and I think if he has some success, maybe another middle school would be interested.
Why don't we consider having it geographically where the parents want it?
We actually asked them geographically where they wanted it, and there was not one consistent answer.
Now, we had a committee some years ago. I think Dr. Hickey and I were on that, and Mr. Hance and others, and we started at the southern end as far as Murray Middle School, and then looked at Rolling Rice, then looked at Holly Shelter Middle School, looked at different sites, and really depended upon the location as to the response.
Well, we tried to create a middle school at Snipes before because we thought that was conveniently located between Coddington and Eaton, about halfway between both of them. And again, we want a year-round middle school, but we don't want it at Snipes. We wanted it at Rolling Rice. It was a case that Snipes was the most convenient, and because it was just coming from being a ninth grade center when we were redoing New Hanover, it would have required a lot less effort. I think in the long run, we'd have probably ended up having to tear Snipes down and rebuild it but
It would be logical to have a year-round school at Noble because that's right there close to Eaton.
Well, they had, remember, the year-round within the school.
right.
And that's when, after that, we offered to have a full-time year-round at Snipes, but they didn't want the location, so.
That's why I said.
Well, yeah, but what about Coddington? What are you going to do with Coddington students?
Coddington, you could do either Rolling Rice or you could do Myrtle Grove,
Well,
because those are the two closest schools.
could.
There were a
but-
lot of parents whose kids weren't in Eaton or Coddington, who were on traditional schedules, who, when we did that committee, would have been upset if we had bumped them from a traditional schedule to a year-round.
Right, right.
Well, we'll certainly let Virgo be the
Yeah.
lead, and everybody will want to join up.
And maybe that will attract some more students
Absolutely.
to want to come to Virgo, because those parents who want a year-round curriculum
Yes, sir.
may be attracted to come to Virgo.
That's the plan.
Dr.
Yes, sir.
Terry, how much room do you have?
He'll still have to do school.
How many more students could you accommodate?
I don't know what our max is, but we have plenty of room. We can go up to at least 400. I don't know what Virgo was at its peak, but at least 450 students.
I think it can hold 500.
I think it's 500.
And you've got how many now?
275, 280.
Isn't that right, Bill? Wouldn't it be about 500? Wouldn't Virgo be about around 500?
Roughly, yes.
Yeah.
So your belief from what you presented is that clearly the students will lose less in the summer and progress further by the example you gave?
Yes, sir. Undoubtedly, the kids that are a little behind, I think that's when we can start to close those achievement gaps. And what we've been able to show, especially with our 8th grade students, doubling our reading proficiency, is that when the kids are with our teachers for longer amounts of time, good things happen. So let's just try to minimize that large chunk in the summertime and provide some opportunities where above the 185 days during those intersessions. I think that will benefit our students tremendously.
That's interesting.
Dr. Markley, this is for information, so when will you be bringing this back?
This will be on the May business agenda as an action item under, it'll be old business at that point.
Will you be having a forum for parents to weigh in prior to that, or?
Now, that was part of, before he got to this point, he had to have that parent piece of conversation.
Okay.
It was one of the when I met with principals, it was, you needed the support of your staff, and you needed the support of your parents before you could come ask for year-round.
Okay.
There are systems around the country that have improved. We've just always left it up to the schools and to the parents, whether it be uniforms or year-round or whatever, but I know there are examples around the country where superintendents have come in and their elementary schools and middle schools, they just, by decision, made them all year-round. And
But some of them had to go back.
well, yeah, but they didn't do the high schools, but
Ms. Coble, you had a...
No, I was just going to say it's interesting because my children went to a year-round school, and there was always a lot of criticism from people who had children outside of the year-round system, and one of the key arguments that we made was the summer slide issue, and I mean I saw it personally. Your kids go by the end of the 5th week, they're ready to go back to school.
Yep. Yeah.
But, we were told then, oh, there's no such thing. There's no such thing.
Oh, it's
Which
real.
is interesting because, we saw it, we knew it. The teachers were able to spend a lot less time reviewing and could hit the ground running, essentially.
and you also look at the opportunities of the 3-week intercession period. Every 9 weeks, you have 3 weeks. If they need remediation, you have 3 weeks for that. Enrichment, you have 3 weeks. Or if the parents just want to take off and go skiing in the off season.
Right, they had they had the option if they wanted to.
Currently, we run an after-school program with Title I funds that would, and actually, I think at Virgo, you do it in the mornings, not the afternoons. That would slide then to be that intercession program potentially, as opposed, because they already have one of the longest days of any of the students. So you could take some of that after-school programming and convert it to intercession programming.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you for
Look
your
forward
time.
to hearing back on this.
In May.
Next item F, public hearing, review and procedures, appendix F, Dr. Marshall.
All right, April 21st is typically our work session day, and there are a couple of work session items that will be presented that day. Example, Pine Valley's going to come in and talk about their 24-hour Skype around the world, which was a truly cool program if you got to go see that. And then a couple other presentations. But we also generally do an annual, it says budget hearing. We've never done a formal budget hearing, but we have a public comment time. And this will be the atypical of a work session. We're going to have a public comment period. So if somebody has something specific to the budget, they can make comments on the budget. Because we're going to present the budget to the full board for the first time tonight. So on the 21st then, we'll have any public comments related to the budget, and then a final board discussion about that budget.
Will we vote on the 21st?
Well, we really won't vote until we get the county budget finalized.
Okay.
So we're going to, correct me if I'm wrong, Mary Hazel.
The board would finalize the county request at the May
Yes.
meeting, and then you wouldn't finalize the budget until, once you hear,
Okay.
probably the first July meeting.
So you'll finalize the county request on the 21st. After based on it, we'll present information tonight, we'll take questions, public input, final discussion on the 21st, and approval of the county request on the 21st as part of that regular work session. So any questions on that process-wise? Great. Yep.
Item 9, Superintendent's Report. Item A, 2015-16 Proposed County Budget Request. Dennis G., Dr. Markley.
All right.
I'm just here for backup.
Yeah, the way this usually works is I do the easy stuff and I turn the hard questions over to Mary Hazel. Now, there are 3 members of the budget committee. At any time, if you want to come in and add or talk about this, please feel free. All right, we're going to hit the budget summary real quick. We'll look at some estimated revenues, some state budget issues, proposed county request. There's a handout on capital outlay, handout on operating, and then we'll talk a little bit about next steps. Just again, this is a review. If you've been with us a while, you've seen this. 70% of our budget goes direct to instruction. That's teachers, supplies, what happens in the classroom. 21% is support, that's transportation, things like that, ancillary, and then some other categories. We get 55% of our revenue comes from the state. We get about 10% federal, that is special ed, Title I, Title II, those kinds of programs. And then 29% of our budget comes from New Hanover County. So our operating budget, we're going to be requesting $2,700 per pupil. We have been talking with the county about getting back to pre-recession numbers, which would be 2008, and then leveling off on that number at $2,700 and using that as sort of a per pupil number for annual funding. So if enrollment goes up, we would get that much per pupil. If it were to go down, that would impact that. This gives us a stable number to do budget planning with. And we think that if we don't reach that number this year, we would reach that number next year with the county. But all indications from the county are we will be there either this year or next year. So that would be an additional $3.4 million at $2,640, an additional $5 million at $2,700. Capital outlay, we think we're going to be pretty firm from the county at $3 million for the next 2 years, which would be an increase of $250,000 per year. And so you can see that 08 level, we were at 2662, and we're coming back up to that after coming out of the recession to around 2,700 per pupil is our goal to get to. Our operating request from the county is going to be about $67 million, about $1.9 million of that actually would go out to charter schools because they get the same per pupil share that we get. So the increase for us at the 2,700 level would be about a $4.9 million increase. And charter school increase would be about $126,000. So the total request from the county next year, counting charter schools and regular schools, would be almost $73 million. On an enrollment number that we're estimating at 26,784. That's both public school and charter school students. Capital outlay, we break that down into categories: repairs and renovations, technology, furniture, vehicles. And those were the requests that we had by each one of those categories. And so $3 million of that funding would be county, some of it would be fund balance, some of it would be lottery, and you can see the breakdown on the bottom half of where those funds would come from to get to that $6 million.
Just to mention that we showed 2 years of need because the county has asked us to project out what our needs would be for the next 2 years. That's why the second column at the top.
Is the county supportive of our needs more so this year than they have been?
Yes, I've got to say the last several years that the relationship with the county has been very good. Starting back when Bruce was there to Chris, we've had probably as good a relationship with the county that I've had working in multiple different school systems. This is probably one of the best county and school relationships that I've seen.
The reason I ask is because the real estate market is blowing up. Up until
Good thing. you mean.
Up until the last 6 months, new construction comprised 5% of my business, of appraising real estate. Now it comprises 95% of my business. So it's just, the market has come back.
What kind of new construction are you talking about?
I'm talking about new
Single-family
construction
homes?
from 225,000 up to about 1.5 million, mainly around the 400,000 level,
Yeah.
For single-family homes.
single-family homes.
And we're seeing it. The River Lights project is about to crank up. That's 2,800 homes, Eddie, and that down there along River Road. Now, as part of that agreement, there's actually land in there that we're supposed to get. Eddie and I met with the River Lights folks last week to review that. There's, what is it? Is it 15 acres? Yeah, they're supposed to designate 15 acres in that River Lights project for a potential school location. And so we met with the developers last week, and that's moving forward, but they're anticipating building out at least the initial sections of that very quickly over the next several years. And in fact, the River Road rerouting, I think they're anticipating that being done by the end of this year. So the old River Road you've been driving on, you won't be driving on. In fact, they're talking traffic circles to sort of slow it down. So that'll be a neat project once they start building that out. You can't drive down Independence without seeing apartments and construction going on there. So we're optimistic that we can hit that 2,700 number with the county.
And that'll really help in our planning for the growth that's coming.
Yep.
Mr. Shell has a question.
If you go back, please, to the prior, can you elaborate just a little on the technology expenditures as that's coming out of one fund, and then you've got technology coming out of the bond issue, right?
It is, I have that.
Is that the handout we're going to get to later?
Yeah, I'm not sure we'll go through the detail of that, but
Okay.
she can pull it up. Can you pull up the capital? It's attached to the agenda item. See, maybe further down,
That's gonna be busy.
4th page.
I need my glasses.
It's also on your computer on your supporting document.
Okay. So right here, this slide shows for the items that we're recommending for 15-16 by revenue source. And so for technology, in the next to the last column, we're looking at about $550,000 coming out of the state reserve we get from state fines and forfeitures, with the rest coming out of the county appropriation.
And we're looking at, a lot of this will go towards computer replacement. Don is in the,
That's really what I'm after, is
Yep.
not so much the funding source, although that's part of it. It's what are we using bond money to spend on, and what are we using these other funds to spend on? I think you just touched on it.
yeah, part of what Don's doing, I'll let her elaborate here, is we're in the middle of replacing a lot of our older computers. If we have computers at average age, almost 7 or 8 years old. So we're having to go in and replace or update a lot of those machines. So a large chunk of this money is going to go in for that. The bond money is going in for a lot of infrastructure and security issues related to technology. Don, you want to expand?
The voice over IP process, upgrading our phone system, because we have an outdated phone system that we're not going to be able to continue support, you know, forever. So we're going to switch over to the voice over IP technology. This request are basically the devices that the kids are using and the teachers are using.
Yeah, I directed on number 10. Over 2 years, that's $2 million in terms of computer replacement. That's going to be the largest bulk of this appropriation.
And part of why I asked the question is those citizens at home that are watching this need to understand, because there was technology in the bond issue that they voted for. I want them to know there are other needs beyond that you're applying for.
Yes.
Okay.
And if there are other questions on the capital projects, now would be a good time when we have these slides up before we go into the rest of the presentation, because we don't really have any other capital detail in there. So.
So you're looking at capital priorities, major projects, Sidbury Road Transportation Division, Lakeside Facility demolition. If you remember, that building was actually on last year's capital list. but when the Sidbury Road property came open, we postponed that, so that's on there. Laney bathroom renovations and painting, a lot of HVAC, some road facility upgrades. We had talked about doing some work in terms of a dropout center at Rowe, and so the tenant there will depart in December, so we would go in and do some renovations to bring that school up to be ready for that. Phase 2, the system-wide computer replacements, that's the largest portion of that. And then just general furniture replacements and replacement of certain vehicles. State funding formula. State funding continues to be an issue. You will hear, depending upon what you're looking at, state dollars have increased. If you looked at 2008 and you looked at today, there are more state dollars than there were in 2008. But enrollment has gone up considerably. Federal stimulus dollars have disappeared, so the total pie is actually a little bit smaller. And so some of the things that we look at when we're putting our budget together, since 2008, we've seen a 3.5% reduction in classroom teachers. Teacher assistants is one we've seen a huge hit on. Textbooks have been reduced 78% since 2008. 51% in instructional supplies, instructional support. Staff development, literacy coaches, school technology, mentor teachers were completely eliminated from state budgets. Central office has seen a 22% cut. Non-instructional, 8%, and then an 18% reduction in funding for assistant principals. So those are some of the back issues from the state that we've been dealing with.
And some
So
of those
are
were
we now
cut.
doing our staff development and literacy coaches and whatever solely from local funds and federal funds?
Yes.
Federal, right now.
Local and
We're
federal.
not doing any from local, but there is some in the request to add to local next year. And we just showed the state formula change, just as we prepared to go into the discussion about the state budget, but we've also had to cut many of these same items out of the local budget. For example, teacher assistants. Over this period of time, we lost about over half of our teacher assistants.
And part of what drives this is the back cost of that, things like retirement that have increased, health insurance costs have increased. So even though you may be getting budgetary increases, a lot of those have gone to cover those kinds of increases. Last year's teacher raise went to mostly locally paid teachers because they're the newest employees. So a lot of that local increase was borne on the teacher raise that came in last year. All right, so as we look at the state budget issue, and this is another case of there are lots of things we don't know. So we've got to plan for potential cost that may or may not be there. We think there's going to be a second phase of teacher pay increases because they have talked a lot about bringing the pay rate, the base pay from $33,000 to $35,000. That will have an impact on us. There's talk about increasing the administrator pay scale 2 to 3% because it's slightly out of whack from where it should be. They no longer automatically fund growth. So we're projecting an increase of about 300 students. So even if there is an increase, is that going to be an increase in the state enough to cover that growth? Driver's education. If they do not fund driver's education or allow me to charge for driver's education, that's a potential $300,000 hit to our local budget. 22% of state teacher assistant funding is non-recurring. That means they put it in last year as one-time money, and right now there's no idea whether that's going to move to recurring or if we're going to have to pick that up out of local.
How much is that, 22%?
I have that. Let's see. Teacher assistants.
I think it's in the 250,000 range.
It is 455,000. The 210 is the part that we chose not to cut last year when they had the state cut for TAs, and we wanted to get rid of positions through attrition rather than cutting, current positions. So we have both of those line items on our budget, but this is to keep from losing any more. So we have that broken out into two different numbers.
Are we state mandated to do driver's education?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
in fact, we have to do it for all students, private school, public school, charter school.
And we may only charge $65. We're currently charging $55, but next year we're going to charge $65. That's the max under the current law that we can charge.
And we anticipate it costing over
About
$300 per child?
Dr. Holliday's staff, I asked them to look at what's the minimum they could do it for, and I think in one of the reports I sent to you, it was about $250 per student.
We're budgeting at $270. for next year, and that's with some cuts to the program. And so that's sort of the minimum we think we can do it for.
If we have to budget it ourselves, we will be fewer classes. Not all students maybe get in. We may have to go to a lottery system to say, we can take 200 kids in this session, and that's it. And so you can apply to, everyone can apply like they say they can, and we'll give you an equal shot to get the number of seats we have. But once the money runs out, we have to say, that's all we can do this year. You'll have to apply next year.
Didn't we talk about that in the budget meeting about whether or not there is no set cap, right? Or there's nothing in the law that speaks to us putting a cap on the number of students, correct?
The law simply says we got to offer it. It doesn't really set
Right,
parameters.
doesn't say we have to provide it for every student in the or every child in that year.
It
So
does
we
or
can cap
doesn't?
it. Does not. It just says we have to offer it
So we'll end up probably having to cap it.
and prioritize it. We had talked about prioritizing the 17-year-olds versus the that kind of thing.
Because right now you can start taking it at 14 and a half, which is absolutely ridiculous. But I wouldn't want my 14 and a half behind the wheel. So we're going to look at that in terms of how many that would be.
Yep. Once we have that number from the state and we know what our budget number is, we'll build based on what we can afford.
You get a learner's permit at what age?
15.
Yeah, you can get to 15, you can start taking driver's ed at 14 and a half.
And you get your license at 16.
Well, if I can clarify just a bit, yeah, it was a little scary for my parents when I got my learner's permit at 14 and a half, I get that. But the law says that driver's ed is a part of the graduated license program in North Carolina, and you can actually get your learner's permit at 15. And so that's why you can start taking driver's ed at 14 and a half, because you have to have driver's ed before you get your learner's permit at 15. Now that, of course, is a parent choice. There's some parents that will wait for their children to take driver's ed later, and then but that pushes everything back. That means they won't get their license at 16, they get their license later. Because you have to have a learner's permit. Now, used to in the old days, when I was coming along, you didn't have to have your learner's permit for any period of time. Now, in the graduated license between 15 and 18, you have to have your learner's permit for 1 full year. So it doesn't matter if you turn 16, if you've only had your learner's permit for 6 months, you've got to continue until you've been driving for 1 full year under that very limited learner's permit.
My granddaughter turned 16 in December, and she does not feel qualified to take driver's ed. So consequently, she doesn't have a learner's permit or a driver's license.
Well, they don't have to. And I tell you, if parents knew how much their insurance rates would go up after their children get their license, they'd probably opt to delay, to be honest with you. I have twins coming up, and I
have a 23-year-old. I'm still not sure he should be driving.
I could say something, Ms. Kavanaugh, but I won't. I wouldn't even think that I might say that. It's very common among many female drivers, but I wouldn't think to say anything
Are
like
you
that.
going to say something?
All right, we're going to move on to the next slide.
Please move on. Something about my precious Sarah Kay?
I said female drivers.
All right, so we have state budget issues. Growth in funding, continuation funding for teacher assistants, teacher and school administrator pay raises. They have talked about continued top-of-the-scale bonuses to hold some of those folks harmless. They've also talked about reinstating of master's pay for science, technology, math, and special ed, and increasing the an increase of $27.50 for classroom resources. This is in the governor's budget, which tends to bear a little resemblance to the final budget sometimes. But there are things that we have to plan for when putting together our budget.
Yeah, one of the points that may not be clear in the way I put this together is our ad list of things we're considering is much more than the estimated county increase. It's like $6.3 million, but we're hoping these items are funded in the governor's budget, and then that brings the request down to the amount that we hope to receive from the county. So we were looking at lots of things that we know we need, and then we'll have to wait and see what the funding source is.
All right, several other state issues that are sitting out there. I think I sent you some information recently regarding sales tax, and there are several plans that would take sales tax and redistribute that. Currently, a lot of the sales tax resides sales tax is distributed in two ways. One, it's on a per capita basis, and one on where the money is collected. As a major shopping hub, we collect a lot of sales tax because of Mayfair, malls, and those places that are here. There's some rural legislators who are concerned and have put a bill out there that would say we need to distribute sales tax more on a per capita basis as opposed to a where you spend it basis. And if that were to happen, major urban centers, Wilmington, Raleigh, Charlotte, Fayetteville, that serve as retail hubs for their area would lose a lot of sales tax revenue. And Bruce, as county manager, former county manager, you can probably speak to that better than I can.
Well, I mean, I'll make a comment.
Yeah.
When sales tax was enacted over the years, it was enacted with what the legislature would call an article. Started with Article 39 and 40, 42, et cetera. And when the legislature considered each of those articles, they decided how it was going to be distributed. So in other words, the first one, Article 39, when it was collected, New Hanover County got more than 40 and 42 combined because they were distributed out by population. Some were population, some were by where it was collected, some were a hybrid of the two. And the schools, and at one point water and sewer, got a portion of the sales tax. And it was kind of like the IRS. They give you rules and you learn how to manipulate or put your budgets together based on those rules. And then, now here you come along and, you talk about wanting to change that. My personal opinion is, you didn't ask for it, but I'll give it since you turned the microphone on. My personal opinion is, instead of taking money from communities that haven't even recovered yet from the deep recession, and in essence put the burden on property tax owners, you're looking at either a property tax increase or a cut in budgets, and schools are the number one slice of the pie, or a combination of both. Instead of doing that, I think they need to take a look to see what they can do to generate monies for those more rural areas. Incentives that bring jobs to those areas. They could have their own form of sales tax, but there's all sorts of incentives to try to bring attention to those areas that are in need of it, rather than killing the golden goose to give money to something else. And Carolina Beach called me today and said, if we cut our tax rate, are we going to lose sales tax? I said, absolutely. He said, well, there's no incentive for us to cut our tax, because they're looking at their fund balance and trying to decide how to deal with that. I said, I think you're at this point, use fund balance to give something back to property tax owners rather than cutting a property tax and end up losing in the long run. It's a bad system, and the state is trying to look at how they can help rural counties, but the unintended consequences are huge.
Another issue for us is the way education funding is distributed, the state money. There are counties that receive low wealth and small county funding that we don't. And so if they change one but not the other, that would really skew how the education funding is distributed. So that would be another issue.
So this is a case where, please, if you have a phone, pick it up and have a conversation with your local delegation about this issue, and just make sure that they're aware of that. And I'm sure they are. County's done a great job of putting out the information on that, but it does have potential to impact us here in the schools. Local operating budget. This is the budget recommendation aligned to what the board goals were. If you remember from I think it was a December session, we talked about professional development, growth funding, maintaining teacher assistants, additional instructional resources, and moving to a risk management in-house system in order to save funds long term. So our proposal also includes local cost estimates for state mandated changes to include salaries and benefits that we've talked about in driver's ed, as well as some school and departmental budget priorities. So as I said, this number you're going to see when you're all done is larger than what we anticipate the county request will be, but we think as if the state picks up or goes back and funds some other items, then we can move further and further down that list and keep it within what our anticipated local budget will be. So operating budget priorities, state issues that are impacting us, we've talked about this, driver's education and growth funding are two of the biggest. Teacher assistants, I'd love to increase teacher assistants, but that simply isn't feasible. So we want to at least maintain our current formula of K-1, where it's one teacher assistant for every 23 students. Salary and benefits, we expect that the state is going to increase starting teacher pay, and we typically pick up local teacher, the newest teachers in the local budget, because the state will pay the cost of the teacher regardless of the years of service. So a 20-year teacher, we tend to put in the state budget and take the lower paid local teacher and put her in our local budget because it's less expensive for us. But that means when you increase the salary, that impact is more in the local budget, sometimes in the state budget. So if they increase the salary from 33 to 35, that's going to be potentially a large impact on our local budget. One of the things we talked about is this, the budget last year did not really pay service to our veteran teachers. And we're concerned that there won't be a change in that. So we are looking at a supplement increase for veteran teachers, those at 26 plus, from 8% to 9%.
Yeah, the new state scale for teachers tops out at year 25 when the old scale topped out at 30. And so, many of those were held harmless or received minimal increases. But when we looked at the 2-year increase for folks moving between the scale we expect for next year and this scale, most other teachers got anywhere from 4 to 20% increase, but the veteran teachers did not, so that's why we're making this recommendation.
All right, so operating budget priorities. We wanted to look at a new professional development allotment, putting some dollars at the school level to help them to drive professional development. The high schools have requested a need for an additional assistant principal, especially with the heavy testing burden that goes on at the high school. Right now, one high school assistant principal basically can be consumed with testing for half the days of the year. Mr. Max, AP, is a fresh young AP, but there are many nights that he was there until 1 o'clock in the morning setting up for testing that was happening. Additional social workers, additional custodial and clerical support, mental health and nursing support. We have talked about the need for mental health. I think you saw an article recently about the increase in suicide at middle schools across the country, and we've seen the increase in mental health needs both at our early age all the way up to our high school.
Aren't we getting a lot of our mental health funding from social services?
We get funding for that, comes to a contract we have with social services. Dr. Holland, go ahead.
Medicaid funding also helps us with some of that.
That's what I meant.
Some of that.
Because a lot of our funding for mental health from Lake Forest Academy comes from.
Yeah, we don't get it direct. We don't get it directly, but the providers bill for it,
right.
And that's how they're paid, which is the same as what the health department does.
That's correct. Yeah, it's billable services, and they reclaim it from Medicaid, like our provider does over here at Lake Forest. The day treatment is a billable mental health diagnosis under the DSM-6. So that would be the same way that mental health folks in our schools, our mental health centers in our schools, reclaim some of the costs of that. But it doesn't pay for everything.
What are the prerequisites for a child to get Medicaid funding for mental health?
I can get that for you.
But I will tell you, that pool has gotten tighter and tighter over the last several years. And the rules for billing that have gotten much, much tighter. And it used to be you could go beyond a certain amount of time, but now it's hard to get beyond like 10 days of service for individual students. And that's making their job that much more difficult.
Which is why for nursing, we're expanding slightly with an additional position in the request for mental health. That's just to cover the increased cost for the current level because they're not able to generate quite as much revenue as they had been.
Additional positions that will increase services to school, a clerical and instructional support position for finance with the addition of our $160 million bond. Part of this position will be going to support that. Additional instructional support and reassigned duties to support health and PE. Risk manager, we'd like to bring that position on board so that we can assume that duty from the county because it will save us money in the long term. Maintenance has requested an additional painter/grounds technician. We want to revise our scholarship process and we do a small scholarship now, but the state has eliminated teaching fellows. And so what we're proposing is a new board scholarship that would fund, for 4 students, that would fund the cost of an average year for a student at a public school, which would be about $7,000 per year for 4 years. And we'd like to maybe ask businesses to partner with us to increase that from 4 scholarships to maybe 5, 6, 7 down the road. So long-term impact of that at its full, next year it would be a $28,000 expense. In 4 years, when you've got the full cohort, it would cost the district about $100,000, but in return, they'd have to come back to us, work in the schools that we identify for them to work in. I think it sends a strong message about growing some of our own. Shift a portion of pre-K costs to free up some local funds, software, instruction materials. We want to change the athletic stipend to bring that in line with the state average. This is one area where we haven't done a whole lot with that stipend, and we want to go back and look at that now. We've done teachers, we've done classified folks with work experience, and this is the one group that we haven't really addressed. We've talked about a new suspension center at Rowe, which I'm really excited about. We would move the current Lakeside program, which is co-located with Mosley, to Rowe, but also create a sort of drop-in center for those students who are short-term suspended so that they wouldn't be at home by themselves, and we could get them some instructional support, and also maybe some parent coaching in there as well. So we think that will max out at about 7.5 positions long-term. And so that you see there, we have to hire a principal to get that in January to get that school ready to go, probably for the fall of the next year. Fund balance appropriation. We have a policy to have an 8% fund balance of our total budget. Our total budget runs about $220 million, so we always try to maintain that 8% fund balance as our goal. And when we have money above that, we use that for one-time items. So we would transfer some to capital outlay. One of the things the committee wanted to recommend was a one-time bonus for classified and central office staff, because last year the state gave all state employees a $1,000 one-time bonus.
It was a raise.
A raise. But it excluded anybody who worked for a school system. They only got $500. And this would be a step towards equalizing those folks with the other state employees. Until we know what the budget is long-term, it's not one we can do on a recurring basis, but we thought it was a gesture for our hourly employees going forward. And this will still keep us close to our fund balance goal of 8%. So our next steps, the April 21st hearing that we've talked about. At May 5th, the board approval of county requests, budget amendments for capital outlay. And in June, we'll finalize the recommendations based on county appropriations. And in July, assuming the legislatures get out of town at a reasonable time, we can approve our final budget. If not, that may get pushed back to August, as has happened in the past. So that's an overview of the budget. Mr. Higgins served as the chair of the budget committee. Anything you'd like to add to that?
I'd like to simply say thank you to all those who participated in developing this budget. We had some very frank and honest discussions as we labored through this. We spent, I guess, maybe 10 to 12 hours working on this budget. And I want to thank Mary Hazel and the superintendent for the work they did on it. I want to thank Lisa and Tammy for their involvement and members of the senior staff for their contributions. I think we have put together a very lean budget given the growth that this county is experiencing. I noticed, the projection's 300 students, but I think this year they projected 300 and we grew 600 or something. We are a growing county, and to have a quality school system, whether anybody likes to acknowledge it or not, does take funding. The projects we saw today about the
Project Lead.
Yeah, Project Lead the Way. That was $75,000. Now admittedly, the chamber has put up that money, but if we move to another school, to another school, to another school, every time we do that, that's going to cost us money. And we have to be aware of that, and we tried to be as good stewards as we could of the funding, but the long and the short of it is, as I said, I think this is a very austere request. I thank the county commissioners for what they've given us in the past, and I hope they will continue to support us.
Other committee members, Ms. Easton, Ms. Colwell, anything you want to add to the?
I'd also like to thank the 3 principals that served on our committee as well.
We had a high school principal, Dr. Sullivan, the middle school principal was Dr. Oates, and then Dr. Hamilton was our elementary principal who served on that committee. All right, that's the budget overview. At the 21st, we'll hear comments from the public, and then we'll have an in-depth discussion that you guys will have, and then we'll approve our county request at that meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item, item 10, consensus items. Item A, personnel, appendix H, Dr. Wilmers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Request that the board approve the personnel matters as presented.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Item B, change of school assignment, appendix I, Dr. Holliday.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, ask that you approve this routine release of students to neighboring school districts whose parents are employed by those school districts.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Item C, budget amendments, appendix J, Mary Hazel Small.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I request the board's approval of the amendments as presented.
Move for approval.
Second.
Comments, questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Thank you. Item 11, under old business, item A, policies for second reading. Mrs. Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 4 policies tonight to be voted on, but because one from the Education Division has a minor revision, I'd like to ask that we vote on them separately, please.
Okay.
So the first one is the Board of Education Committee Representatives, 1234. And you can see the changes that were added there in red that we saw at last month's meeting.
Move for approval.
Second.
Comments, questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 1234 is approved.
Thank you. The second one is policy 1250, and this is claims and judgments, and I guess Mr. Bullard would be able to answer any questions if we have any additional ones. This was a complete rewrite.
Move for approval.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 1250 is approved.
Okay. The third policy is 1310. This is the Board of Education meetings, and you can see the changes there that are in red.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to amend the motion. I have some real questions about this agenda review provision, and would ask that would amend to strike that from the policy.
I second the amendment.
Okay, let me ask a question. If you
Her amendment was to adopt it as presented,
And his
Right.
is
to amend it by striking the second bullet, agenda review, from the policy.
But then, but wouldn't that make it the policy we now have? That was what.
Well, it may be, but I mean, okay,
Could you elaborate on why you want to strike it?
unnecessary.
I'd like
I
to
think
comment. I disagree. I think the whole purpose of having is to elaborate, get more detail out, have better communication among the board members on the issues. I guess that was my passion, really, was to bring this to fruition so that we would have more communication on items.
Well, the work session, in my opinion, does the very same thing. We've already got the work session set up for the third Tuesday of each month as needed. It's kind of like the public hearing or whatever we're doing on the 21st. Gives an opportunity for further discussion. So, you know, I just think that it's unnecessary to do this.
We get our agendas on Thursday, and we have from Thursday to Tuesday to contact staff or fellow board members or anything for questions and considerations or whatever. So that gives us 4 days in order to make sure that we're prepared for the meeting.
I just don't think you get the solidarity of an open discussion the way you're doing it now. My experience with it has been that when you have that agenda review, then you have opportunities to ask questions, you weigh out the pros and cons of items. Staff, if there are questions, staff has the ability to bring those questions to the full board when you have your regular meeting. That way you flush out issues that come up with the discussion. I just personally like the agenda review. I saw the merits of it, and I saw boards have more discussion on items. Felt like it brought the board closer together. That's why I like it.
I've noted that when I have a question of staff or the superintendent about an agenda item, invariably within an hour or so, there's an email sent out to the whole board clarifying that particular issue or giving answers to it because they assume that one question, the whole board might have a question about it.
My thoughts, after thinking about this, and of course being in the policy committee or on it, we send everything forward to the full board. But as I started thinking about it, Mr. Shell, if we're at a meeting, and it certainly is open to the public, and we're asking questions, and we get the answers, additional answers, then we come before the public. We may not ask that same question because we already know the answer, but the public doesn't hear that. So to me, I would be giving lip service to our regular meeting.
Well, if you didn't ask the question in the regular meeting for the benefit of the public.
But the redundancy would not seem genuine.
So in other words, if you ask a question in the agenda review, you got an answer, you wouldn't feel like it was genuine to be repetitive?
Well, I may not ask it because I already know the answer.
Well, to that point, then if you're asking a question via email to a staff member, that's not necessarily public.
No,
I mean,
but
the email is public, so, you know, you may get your answer and not ask that question during the meeting as well.
This is just my interpretation of how
No,
it might work.
I'm not.
It may not work.
I'm not.
Any other comments, questions?
I would also take issue with the equating a work session and an agenda review. The work session doesn't normally have a lot to do with what's going to happen in the regular meeting agenda, so I would not equate the two. And I'm assuming if you're asking a question in an agenda review, it would be incorporated in whatever presentation was going to be happening in the regular meeting. So it's not I don't know that you would necessarily have to ask the same question twice. I'm assuming the purpose of it would be to have it incorporated into whatever presentation you were asking about.
Since we have an amended motion to amend the motion, which would be to delete the agenda review from the policy, is that correct? Okay, to amend the motion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Opposed.
Okay, so
Now we vote on the
that
amended
carries.
motion.
Right, that carries. Now we'll vote on the amended motion, which is to drop the,
Well, which is to
My
adopt,
mind.
to adopt
that's
the,
our new,
to adopt the,
right, to
the
adopt the.
Original.
policy as it exists without that in it,
Okay,
Go right back to the old.
back to the old
Right.
policy.
basically,
So
that's what I
what's
said.
What's the question that we're voting on there?
We're voting on keeping the policy as it is now without the agenda review.
I
Right.
thought, in essence, you did that, I thought, when you struck this from the,
No,
No, that was
you
to
struck it,
amend,
but then you have to actually vote on the amended motion.
that was voting to
There's
amend the
two
motion
different
which
votes.
passed. So now we'll vote on the new motion, which is to
Mhm.
drop that. Okay. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, passes 4-3. Okay, next item
Oh,
on the agenda.
wait a minute, we have one more policy, Mr. Hayes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is from instruction, this is 7413 report cards, and Dr. Smith found out from a special meeting that we needed to add something to this policy, even though it was ready for second reading. So, Dr. Smith?
Yes, there are two major changes that we're recommending, both as a result of state board policy. The first of which is in the red on page 1 of 2. Currently, state board policy requires that NC final exams and end-of-course exams count 20% of a student's final grade, and our current local policy counts them as 25%. We are asking that to be reduced to the requirement of the State Board of Education policy, which is the 20%. We believe that it is in the best interest of our students that one grade taken on one day for one assessment not carry the weight of 25% of the child's grade. And we also are adding language that aligns with the State Board of Education policy in reference to occupational course of study students. The second major change, which occurs on page 2, is as a result of changes that the State Board of Education approved for 9 through 12th grade students in their grading scale. We've transitioned to a 10-point grading scale, or we will transition to a 10-point grading scale, and we'd like to establish and build continuity between our grade spans, so we'd like that to be reflected in grades 3 through 8 as well.
Thank you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you.
Mr. Hayes, that we need to vote on that one, and that would be the.
May I ask a question for clarification?
Yes, please.
I'm looking at it, and I just want to make sure I understand. It says grade 3-8-12 is underlined. So, and then 9 through 12 is struck out altogether. So I'm asking, is it now 3 through 12 will be on this 10 scale?
Yes, sir. Originally, we had two different grading scales. And so now we're transitioning from the 3-8 and then the 9-12 to just a 3-12 grading scale, which will be a 10-point grading scale.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear
sir.
that that's what we were voting on. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? We don't have a motion yet.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any more comments, questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
6-1. Let's see, item B, on the agenda, district's partnership with UNC Wilmington for professional development, appendix DD. Dr. Markley.
This was presented last month for information. I would ask for board approval. This is the partnership that covers our student teachers and with UNCW.
Move for approval.
Comments, questions?
I would like to have Mr. Bullard weigh in on this. Are you comfortable with this contract?
Yes, I reviewed it. It doesn't cost the school system any money, and it's consistent with what we've been doing in the past.
Does it protect our rights in terms of additional funds or, a revenue stream?
I'm not sure I understand.
I must be talking about the wrong one. Never mind.
I think you're on,
I was on the other, yep, sorry. Never mind,
Plus
I'll
there's
ask
a-
that question in a minute.
Plus, there's a 30-day clause in here, isn't it, that it can be canceled, a 30-day notice in writing at any time?
Yeah, we've always had a good working relationship with their student-teacher division.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Item C, Legion Stadium Sound System and Scoreboard Upgrades, Appendix Double C. Dr. Mark.
If you remember, we sent a copy of a suggested contract over to the city for review related to us helping to reimburse for the cost of a scoreboard. They sent back some revisions, which were reviewed by Mr. Bullard. Basically, they took our contract and added a few more legalese words, but it's in basically the same contract that we sent over. I'll ask Mr. Bullard to review and to give his opinion.
The contract provides for the installation of a new scoreboard at the Jurgensen Gabriel Field at Legion Stadium, as well as a new audio system, PA system. They are requesting the school board to contribute 25% of the cost. The estimate would put the school board's 25% at $22,500. We have the agreement caps the school board's cost at that fixed amount, $22,500. So even if the cost exceeds their estimate, the school board is still only going to contribute $22,500. If it comes in less than the estimate, then your actual cost will be less because you would be contributing up to a maximum of 25%. It provides for the school board to retain the proceeds from the advertising that is placed on the school board. As I understand, it's going to be an electronic or digital scoreboard, so that ads can be placed and that the run across or scroll across in an electronic form, and it could be replaced with different ads, so that revenue will come to the school board. The city has agreed to maintain it, insure it, and repair it in the event it breaks. The city will provide us instructions and technical support on how to use it. So the city will be getting the rest of the funding from other parties, but they did not want to make it a multi-party agreement. They wanted to just keep this agreement between the school board and the city, which is fine with us. As long as we're capped, we don't need to provide. Oh, apparently my mic wasn't on, sorry. We don't need to provide in the agreement what the other parties are going to pay for. That's up to the city. So it's for your consideration tonight, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I have one on item number 2, the terms. I noticed that was left blank. Was that?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to mention that. Thanks for pointing that out. The city left that blank. I've asked them to let us know how long they want the agreement to last for. I didn't hear back today from them. I had originally proposed that the agreement extend for the estimated use life of the scoreboard. We don't know exactly what that is, but we're guessing that it's about 15 to 20 years. Because you don't want to invest 25% of the cost of something, and then if it breaks and the city doesn't repair it, you would want them to be obligated to repair it for whatever expected use life there is. If they want to put in an actual number of years, that's fine, but it needs to equate to what we believe the estimated use life is. So if the board wants to approve it contingent on the term being at least 15 years, then I think I could approve that as well. I would recommend that you do that, because that would protect your interest for at least that amount of time.
And Mr. Willard, just to clarify for the board, the revenue is only during the times that we're on the field.
That's
We
correct.
don't get revenue when the Hammerheads are playing. So they'll only be for those events that we're controlling.
And based on past history, we're not expecting a tremendous amount of ad revenue from the scoreboard, because like Dr. Markley said, it's only the advertisers should be advertising when New Hanover High School is actually playing a game there, not when the Hammerheads and other users would be using it.
So what percentage would you say that we use the facilities in terms of overall percentage? Is it an equal percentage?
No, we because I'm on that committee.
Yeah, I don't know if I could answer that.
And we use it a much higher percentage, New Hanover High School uses it a much higher percentage of time, because it's not just football on there. You have football, Mr. McAdams, help me here, soccer.
Soccer, lacrosse.
Male and female sports there, that, no, we're the primary user of the stadium.
Okay.
So in a sense, I think it's an opportunity, and I have no idea about revenue and so forth, but at least it presents itself the opportunity where we can recoup an
Oh, yeah,
investment, so to speak.
anytime we can.
Right,
yeah.
and then also Hanover can, depending on how we work that out, could also generate revenue, because it's what was mentioned in here earlier tonight, is that signs and so forth on fences and so forth generate income. I think this could generate income, because you have some large crowds out there at the stadium that I think people would advertise. It's a scrolling type of thing, and all types of things. And if you go out there at all, then, you know, you cannot understand, you know, you can hear that someone's talking over the systems, but you can't understand them. I mean, the acoustics and so forth is just terrible.
But I would reiterate what I said when we started this process. If we recoup advertising revenue, that's a plus, but at the end of the day, this is still
Right.
considered a $22,000 expense for the scoreboard, so that we're not, if revenue doesn't generate what you think it does, just understand it's costing us $22,000. There's a chance through advertising we would get it back, but we budget it as an expense.
But it would be foolish not to take advantage of the
Well, the
opportunity.
Hammerheads,
That's- I just
the
wanna make
Hammerheads were
sure
very
we-
excited, and they seemed to think in the meeting, they seemed to indicate that they could generate through the revenue. And I think we have more people at some of the Hanover games out there than the Hammerheads have at some of their events. So I
We
think
may be
it-
pleasantly surprised. We'll see.
That would be nice.
Mr. Bullard, if we approved a 15-year term and it lasted more than 15 years, could it be construed that we would lose the revenue after 15 years?
Yeah, it could. So if you're concerned about that, we would need to amend that and state that we continue to receive the revenue for as long as the scoreboard remains
Operational.
When you had nothing in there
yes.
now, you could just put that in there, couldn't you?
I could,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
And without
I think-
designating 15 years or 20 years or 10 years,
Can we
whatever.
make an amendment to that effect, or do we need to?
No, we can just write it in the contract.
Where number two?
I think we do need to include it in the contract and then put the onus back on the city in terms of, these are the terms that we're agreeing to,
Yeah, 'cause-
rather than waiting for them to.
Where it's blank now, we can just insert that in there.
But I don't, excuse me a second. Yeah, I mean, we could eliminate the number of years as a requirement in terms of how our right to collect the revenue. I'm not sure the city is going to agree to let you collect revenue indefinitely for a school board that's only going to last 15 years. Because
So for the
eventually, the
life of
city's
the-
going to replace it, and you may or may not contribute to the replacement cost. And it, say 15 years from now, if the city replaces it and you don't contribute to the replacement cost, I don't think the city is going to want to let you continue to receive the ad revenue from the new one at that point in time.
I don't think anybody thought that was, I
For
think
the
what
life
they're
of-
saying
For the
is,
life of the scoreboard.
yeah, the life of the
Right.
school, of the
For its
scoreboard.
u-
Right.
That's all we're saying.
Okay.
I do have a question, and if you could clarify for me. Paragraph 4, the very last line, the school board through its superintendent may assign its rights under the agreement to New Hanover High School or its athletic booster club, and it says stricken per Lisa Estep and Tammy Koval. Explain that to me.
That language originally came from my draft, and my thinking was to try to treat New Hanover High School the same as the other high schools are treated in terms of ad revenue from their signs around their athletic fields. The city agreed to it, but I think Ms. Estep and Ms. Koval wanted the sentence stricken, so that's how the draft came to the board.
So New Hanover doesn't get the revenues?
It's it.
How are we
Yeah.
supposed to recoup how are we supposed
No,
to?
that was gonna be after we recoup.
What?
The 22.5, that if we put it in, then after that, then the money was going to Hanover.
I don't have a problem with that.
That was my understanding.
Well, that's not what it says.
The reason, again, the way it reads to me is that from the get-go, the ad revenue goes to Hanover. And then what happens, as I pointed out, there is occasion that there are other teams that use that field. So, if there is advertising, on the scoreboard and we designate it all to New Hanover, if other teams happen to be using it for some reason, and you know, worst case scenario, Laney Stadium encounters a grass mole or something, and so those kids have to move out. You're designating something to a specific school. If the school is using it, I don't mind putting it as the school that's using it gets the ad revenue. But in the, I know, unlikely event that another school will use it and there are jamborees on those fields, on that field, I think it's best to leave it more general.
We don't get any of the revenue for the,
That's BB&T, they sponsor that.
for the jamboree.
I wasn't aware that other high schools used
They
Legion
don't.
Stadium.
They don't.
They don't.
They do. I've been on the jamboree, to the lacrosse jamboree and to the football jamboree.
But that's a jamboree,
That's
that's
a
not
jamboree.
a,
So I don't think anyone sponsors the lacrosse jamboree, so, I mean, y'all do what you want, but I'm just saying, to me, it made more sense.
But
to make
what
it
you're saying
general.
then is that Laney is not entitled to the revenue generated from the signs and advertisements hanging around their field, that shouldn't go to Laney.
No.
Because Hanover Gophers might invade Legion Stadium, and now they're having to go over to Laney to play. I mean, I don't really understand.
Well, I don't-
My understanding was we were gonna pay for this out of school board funds, and then once the money was recouped, then after that, anytime Hanover played a game out there, money was going to Hanover. If the Hammerheads were played, the money goes to the Hammerheads, whatever entity is out there. But if it's a Hanover event, Hanover gets funds. That was my understanding.
after we recoup
Right, after
22.5.
we recouped
Who
the
is the
22.5.
person in the administration that would tell us whether or not another team plays at Legion Stadium? Is that you, Rick?
Yes, ma'am.
So do other teams play at Legion Stadium?
It has happened in the past. It has happened in the past in some rare instances. And when one of the local teams is playing New Hanover at that facility, but it does not, and it has not happened where a local team has been the home team there,
Okay.
to my knowledge.
Well, Hoggard used to use Legion, but then when we built them a stadium, they were,
2001.
yeah.
Yes, it was quite interesting how the Mid-Eastern Conference had to schedule in those days. They had to schedule Hanover and Hoggard opposite. And since 2001, they haven't had that issue. So you could have the opportunity of having 4 home games in one night here in town.
Let me suggest a minor change, I think that would solve this, where it says, the assignment to the Hanover High School or other school as appropriate. So that if Hoggard had to play a home game there, I could simply say they would get it whatever ad revenue from that game.
Thank you, Solomon.
Yeah, I mean, the language can
That makes sense.
can be reworded to exclude,
Because I understand what they're getting at. Hoggard at one time used that field, and if their field was being renovated, they'd likely go back to that field temporarily.
Well, I think what's not being said is, if there's a game there and there's money to be made in the advertisement, it's the boosters and those people that are gonna go out there and work for the advertisements. And they get there working for the advertisements because their school's gonna benefit. So if someone other than New Hanover's playing, that's what you're saying.
Is there the need for an amendment to
Of
be
course,
made to that?
if there's an emergency, though, I mean, like if another school has to play there in an emergency situation, I don't think they're gonna run out and try and sell advertising.
No.
I think they're just gonna go there and play their game, and there won't be any advertising that night. So, you know, they wouldn't have time.
I don't think so.
Do we have to vote on the superintendent's recommendation
No, I think we
or
can just,
his amendment?
If you've got a contract that you're changing, yes.
Well,
I don't think there's a motion on the floor,
I'll
so you don't
motion
need to
make the-
amend.
I will motion to make the amendment as per
Is there?
Dr. Markley's suggestion.
I second it.
okay. Any other comments or questions?
all right, so we're saying that once the 22.5's been recouped, Whatever team is the home team, is playing a home game, would be entitled to the revenue from that.
That'll solve it,
Yeah.
because 99% of the time, that's gonna be New Hanover High
Yeah.
School.
Probably 99.9% of
Right.
the time.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Good for you.
Passes. Thank you. Let's see, under item 12, new business,
We motioned on
item A, June 2015 North Carolina Final Exam Score Waiver for graduating seniors,
Did you
appendix
vote- you
L.
voted the
We
amendment?
voted on the
Did you
amendment.
vote the actual
We didn't vote
contract?
on the actual contract.
Oh, okay.
All right.
It wasn't a motion to begin with, was
No,
it? So.
there
we
wasn't a
voted-
motion.
The
It
mo-
wasn't a motion to
the
begin
motion,
with,
the
so-
motion included everything.
Okay.
Yeah, because you just put that in, Tim's recommendation.
We'd only have to do that if there were two motions,
Right.
but there was only the one motion, which was yours, to do it as the superintendent, so we don't have to have a second vote. Per
Mr.
Robert's
Bullard, are
rules.
you comfortable with that position?
Well, if you could just review it one more time, because I was talking to Dr. Holliday when someone made that
We
last
only
motion.
had, we only had, instead of having two motions,
All right.
an original motion and an amendment, we only had the one motion where Ms. Coble said she made the motion that we have the amended verbiage. And I seconded it, and we passed it. So that's it.
That wasn't the only change to the contract that we made, though, because we also made a contract, but there was no, there were no terms, or there was nothing voted on.
The life of it.
The life of the equipment. So I made the amendment to add the language that Dr. Markley suggested. That was my amendment.
So you did have two motions?
Well, there actually.
No
Let's
one
just
else
vote
made
on
another
that.
motion.
Let's
There were
just
two
vote on
things
it.
added.
Yeah.
Okay,
One-
then since you made the only motion, and it was with those two amendments, then that's all we need.
No, I only
She didn't include the
motioned
first one.
to amend per Dr. Markley's, just
So you
further
need to go
discussion.
back and do the other verbiage? Okay.
Exactly.
No, let me see if I can explain what I think happened.
Let's just vote again.
Yeah, let's just vote again and
All right,
clarify.
let me make a motion.
Mr. Higgins, go ahead if you can clarify.
I move that we adopt this contract with the provisions that, number one, it will be a change to reflect that it will continue in effect so long as the equipment is operational. And number two, that the school system will recoup any revenues generated by this board, this school board, doing any school athletic event, and then after that has been satisfied, the $22,500, that New Hanover High School will then be entitled, oh, excuse me, not New Hanover High School, the home team using Legion Stadium will be entitled to the revenues generated from that school board.
Point of order, I think that since Ms. Coble made the motion, that we do have to have an amendment to her motion, and that it would not be in a point of, it would not be
Or she could just
okay.
withdraw her motion, right?
She would have to withdraw her motion.
Can I not amend my motion?
Who's on first?
That's why.
Can I interrupt for just a moment?
May I suggest that?
Mary Hazel has something very
every-
important to share with us. I
I was
can
just hoping
see
that
it
we
in
could
writing.
simplify this by having the language that the funding comes to the school board, and then the finance department can direct it at your pleasure, you know, to any school, or keep it centrally at any time you want, without it having to be in the contract. Because we distribute
agree with
revenue
that.
to schools all the time, so that might simplify not having to have that issue as part of the because they don't care. We just want to make sure the revenue comes to the school system in the contract.
Right.
The rest of it, we can handle any way you direct us to.
That's a good suggestion.
The problem
It comes
is,
to the-
you don't get the revenue from ticket sales, do you?
Yes, we do.
Y'all get the
No,
revenue?
the school does, but the revenue for that, you just direct it to go to the school system, and then, once it gets to that point, then you could decide how how to disperse it. You don't have to put it in the contract that it
With the
goes to
city,
school. That's
yeah.
up to you.
Folks, why don't you just direct Mr. Bullock to make the changes, negotiate with the city, and then bring back that contract for approval?
Okay.
That's a good suggestion. Thank you. Again, Solomon rules.
He's got his directions, he can negotiate with the city to
You-
finalize
Do you
the
have that,
contract.
do you have that
I've
down,
got it.
Wayne?
You
Okay.
don't even need a motion. I've got my direction. Thank you.
Did you follow that?
Yes.
All right, yeah.
Is everybody withdrawing their motion?
I'll send the draft to the board, and if anybody has any comments, just let me know.
Thank you.
So I guess everyone has withdrew everything there is to withdraw.
I withdraw
Okay.
my previous motion, whatever.
Thank you, Wayne.
Okay. Okay, I read that. Item A, June 2015 North Carolina Final Exam Score Waiver for graduated seniors, Appendix L. Dr. Smith.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we are asking that the board approve the NC final exam score waiver for 146 graduating seniors. These two seniors are required by state board policy to have their NC final exam be computed as a part of their final grade. State board has approved a waiver for this because for the first time, as a part of these exams, the constructed responses are counted in that grade, and there's a delay in when we'll receive those scores, so we don't want to delay graduating these seniors. So because we're asking the board to suspend its own policy, we're bringing that to the board for the board's approval. But this will impact 146 seniors.
Move for approval.
Second.
Comments, questions?
What do you mean by, is it a permanent waiver, or will eventually those scores be reported?
This is a waiver for these 146 students just for June 2015, yes.
Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Approved. Item B, bids for Veterans Park cooling tower replacement, Appendix M. Bill Hance.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Recommend that the board approve the cooling tower replacement at Veterans Park.
Move for approval.
Second.
Questions?
I have a question.
Michelle?
Recommendation is for $494,299, Mr. Hance, right?
That's correct.
On the second page, your source of funds were lottery funds and bond funds,
That's correct.
which more than covered the 494. So I guess my question is, with approval, where's the money come from?
We'll use the lottery funds first, and then the remaining, to cover the remaining amount, would use the bond funds, saving as much bond money as we can to go toward additional projects that the board may want, or go into the bond contingency so that we can have it to support the award of the remaining bond projects.
So would we get, as a board, get a subsequent analysis to show what's available for bond funds after these are awarded?
Right, we'll have,
Yeah, for all three of these, some parts of these projects were budgeted in both, not knowing what the cost would be. And so we will be bringing back amendments to redirect that money once these projects are awarded.
Okay, that's what I
Thank
did. Thank you.
Mr. Hance, just to be clear, I understand from you that starting next month, we're going to get a statement that's much clearer about where the money's coming from and what money we are not using or are using, and if there's going to be anything left over.
that's correct. Based on your recommendations, Mr. Higgins, and we will have a different financial sheet on the second page of all of these, beginning with the board meeting in May.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Item C, bids for Sunset Park Elementary School roof and fascia panel replacements, Appendix N. Bill Hance.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Request that the board approve the re-roofing project for Sunset Elementary.
Move for approval.
Second.
Questions?
Yes? Same thing apply here, Mr. Hance?
Yes.
I'm good.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Item D, bids for Eaton Elementary School HVAC equipment replacement and mechanical controls upgrades, Appendix O, Bill Hance.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I request that the board approve the HVAC replacement for Eaton Elementary School.
Move for approval.
Same thing.
Second.
Mr. Shell?
Good.
You're good?
Yeah, second
Any
time
other
is
questions?
sure.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Item E, bids for Coddington Elementary School, HVAC equipment replacement, mechanical controls upgrades, Appendix P, Bill Hance.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Request that the board approve the HVAC replacement at Coddington Elementary School.
Move for approval.
Second.
Questions?
Let me simply say, I think I raised the question at one of the budget hearings or something about why we were doing Eaton and not Coddington, when both of them were built and opened at the same time. So I'm happy to see that we are doing both of them at the same time. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Item F, bids for Noble Middle School asbestos abatement and floor tile replacement, Appendix Q, Bill Hance.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Request the board approve the asbestos abatement floor tile replacement Phase 1 at Noble.
Move for approval.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Thank you. Item G, consideration of the design consultant agreement for Bradley Creek Elementary School and Johnson Early Childhood Center HVAC improvements, Appendix R, Bill Hance.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is the contract for, you had selected a designer at your March meeting. This is the contract for the design for Bradley Creek and Johnson. Request that the board approve.
Move for approval.
Second.
Questions?
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. Hance, this is am I right, this is a $4.2 million project?
Correct.
And that the design is a percentage of that total?
That's correct.
So this would change depending on whether we had overruns or not?
No, this is a lump sum contract, but if we add anything to the project or we make additions to it at our request, then we would negotiate an additional fee for the design, if that's right. But this is approximately 10.5%.
And the funding for this project comes from?
This is from the bond. I believe it's at the financing, isn't it? It's Bradley Creek and Johnson. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm good.
Any other questions?
I just
don't have the
just
financials.
for clarification, what, in 50 words or less, what's being done at these two schools that entails a $4 million expenditure? I mean, when I see, HVAC improvements at Johnson and Bradley, I don't understand what we're doing that's gonna entail this kind of expenditure. I don't need a long detail, but just an understanding.
At Bradley Creek and at Johnson both, they're both the same, relatively the same age, the same type of school, the same age, and they're clones of each other. And so we're completely replacing the HVAC, going back in, putting it in at about the same way that it is now, but we're replacing the HVAC to newer HVAC units, but we're not changing to a newer HVAC system. In other words, it's the same type of system, but we're just putting in new systems, new equipment.
And that's.
But we're not yeah.
And that's for the two schools, that's
Yes.
$4.5 million?
Yes, for the new schools, yes.
Okay. Just seems,
Where
I
is the-
don't know, just seems mighty large.
I don't know where the finance, Eddie, you have the amount, I do not have the financial sheet with me on this one.
If you go to page 25, it gives you a pretty good summary of what's being done. 49,000 square foot buildings, mid-'80s, each one creates
They're
the same
both
prototype. Their overall
1985.
HVAC configurations, a water source heat pump. The scope of this project includes one-to-one replacement, so it's a total replacement at both schools of the system to a closed circuit, cooler replacement, boiler replacements. It's a pretty extensive overhaul of both systems.
The only thing I added is what Mr. Hanson was talking about. The $4.2 million budget initially funded in the bond. After getting into this project, that was to change this system. Right now, the system's zoned for one air handler serving about 4 classrooms, and we don't get the best comfort control that way. But to change to a 1-to-1 unit classroom ratio, we would have to build mechanical rooms. So after getting into this, we did not think that that was the best expenditure of our funds given all the needs of the district. So we cut back to a 1-to-1 replacement of the exact system that they currently have. It will be operating much more efficient, and we'll see some efficiencies, in our energy bills. They'll have much more, better control of the temperatures in the classrooms. But we went back to a 1-to-1 ratio. Consequently, we anticipate our bids come in at about half the cost of the original 4.2 number. So at the end of this project, we do expect to bring you back a savings.
Okay, all right, well, I mean, I can understand that a little better, but,
And the fee is based off the anticipated bids, not the 4.2 budget.
okay.
We've taken that into consideration in negotiating our fees.
So, just to be clear, if I were to go over to Johnson when all this is done, I'm gonna see a unit sitting outside roughly,
What you will see at the end of this project, if you go to Johnson or Bradley Creek, you will see brand new units to replace all the units you see there today. And in addition to that, you'll see new DDC controls added to those systems.
okay,
But it's a 1-to-1 replacement, which means before I had 1 unit serving 4 classrooms.
Right.
The plan was I'd have 4 units serving 4 classrooms. But after getting into that, we just didn't feel that the expenditure necessary to create that 1-to-1 ratio was the highest priority of our district, with all the other needs we have.
so these will be new high-efficiency units?
They
and-
will.
And you're replacing the boilers. What's the energy source for the boilers?
These are all water source systems,
Oh, okay, good.
and they have natural gas.
Mhm.
Is there a
Okay.
motion on the floor?
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Item H, consideration of the design consultant agreement for Sidbury Road Complex Improvements, Appendix S. Bill Hance.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is the design for the renovation of the Sidbury Road Rock Church for College Park, and it is the design for the bus garage, the northern bus garage that's going to support the 80 buses that were moved from Laney.
Move for approval?
Second.
Questions?
Yes. I'm certainly new, and so I'm not familiar, this board may be, on Sidbury, but I wasn't sure what, you got $4.4 million you're spending, I wasn't sure what the scope of work was. Could you elaborate, Bill, a little bit on that?
We have about a 39,000 square foot facility, which was a former church. We've purchased it. We're going to need to renovate that in order for College Park to move into it while College Park is being torn down and replaced. So we will be placing some mobile units out there as well as renovating the inside of the facilities to support the elementary program there, and they will be there for a period of approximately 2 years. We also have moved approximately 80 buses out from the Laney Trask complex, and we've relocated them at the Sidbury Road site. So we need to create a northern bus parking lot for them. We have about 79 acres on the site to do that, and we will create that lot, in other words, a lot of paving and some buildings that are out there to support the bus drivers that are coming out there every day and to do some minor maintenance on the buses. We will bring back to you in the July timeframe a schematic design of this project so that you can see it laid out on the site itself. The bus area will be pretty much behind the school as it sits facing Sidbury Road. It will be pretty much behind the school in an area to the rear.
The bus lot will be a permanent facility that'll be built. The trailers is temporary while the elementary's there. We do have some long-term ideas of what to do with that site once we get through all the construction.
Have you been out there to see that? You would arrange a trip out there one day. It's a real nice facility that's gonna, after we get through with it, as far as the swing site for the elementary schools, then I think we've got some plans as far
And
as
these
the middle
funds are
school.
coming from where?
I'm sorry?
Are these bond funds or these funds?
These are local funds.
Sir?
Well, these are local funds for the bus garage. We can't utilize the bond funds for that. So that's all local funds,
So is
or
that-
capital funds.
Mary Hazel, is that fund balance? You bringing that up?
Well, the actual project work is part of what's being budgeted next year. Isn't that correct, Eddie?
Yeah, this is the design
This is the
phase of that.
This is just the design, yes.
But he is correct, over the next 2 years in our capital budget, which we just presented, would be the actual work.
All right, the funding source, there's actually two funding sources. We will use lottery funds for College Park facility, and we'll use local capital for the transportation facility. Since the county has asked for and approving a 2-year budget, we're recommending that our budget to fund these improvements also be funded over 2 years. And they've agreed to that.
Let me, maybe if I elaborate a little bit, you understand where my challenge is. I'm accustomed when something's approved of seeing where the money comes from, and then a budget amendment that follows it, and then a tracking of that fund of how much has been approved from it in terms of the money going into it, the balance of revenues and expenditures within a particular project. And that's what I'm struggling because it's up here, it's not on paper.
The budget amendment was previously brought to the board, but what Bill was talking about with Mr. Higgins earlier in terms of the new format that we're going to bring next month is really going to help you, because you're going to be able to see sort of a line item by revenue source and expenditure, the total project, multi-year project budget, and where we stand at every meeting. So I'm sorry we didn't get that ready for this meeting, but we'll have it next time.
I'm just trying to understand. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that'll help a lot.
Okay, I'm good.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just to clarify, so these changes are going to be in place essentially for 4 years. Is that correct? I mean, we're using it as a swing site, an elementary swing site through 2019, I think the projected?
I think so, yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, so then at that point, we will then need to come back and do the same process to make revisions or changes in order to use it for another program. Let's say if we decided to open it as the middle school or move the middle
Right,
school.
the bus part becomes permanent.
Will be permanent.
The school will be configured to serve the elementary during transition. And then we've talked about several options long-term.
Right.
Middle school. Depending upon what the project is, we'd have to come in and make some revisions based on what we decide the long-term future of that piece of property is.
Is there an opportunity for us to consider that, or at least in the design phase for these revisions now? In
Yep.
terms of, I'm just trying to save us from having to spend a significant amount of money and time and energy to
One of the biggest-
rework something that we could have done ahead of time.
One of the biggest expenses here is going to be bringing in the what is it, 8 mobile units that are coming onto that site to provide the
Okay.
additional classroom.
Well, the bulk of the budget that is shown is actually for the Northern Transportation Division.
Okay.
We will try to minimize any cost to the church facility, and whatever improvements we do, we'll try to make sure as possible that they're consistent with any long-term use.
Example, when we go in and we'll have to upgrade probably the technology. We'll make sure those kinds of things are things that'll carry over to any future renovations.
Okay.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Item I, consideration of a design phase change order for Northeast Elementary School, Appendix T, Bill Hens.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is a deductive change order. It's bringing $45,000 back, so we request that the board approve this deductive change order from the Northeast Elementary School.
Move for approval.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Item J, consideration of a three-party right-of-way encroachment agreement at Northeast Elementary School, Appendix U, Bill Hens.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, request that you approve the three-party right-of-way encroachment agreement. This will allow us to do work that we have to do for the school in the right-of-way. DOT will authorize us to do the right-of-way. We will do work within the right-of-way. We will do the work, and then we will turn everything over to the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority to maintain long-term.
Move for approval.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Item K, Apple sole source resolution, Appendix B, Dawn Brimson.
Request that the board approve the Apple source resolution for the purchase of some iPad Air 2 devices out of Race to the Top funds.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Item L, school-wide sole source resolution, Appendix W, Dawn Brimson.
Yes, and I'm not sure what to do with this one. It was just brought to my attention that this is the wrong attachment here. This is for the next one, that the attachment for Appendix W is not on the website. So
Yeah.
I would like you to approve it still because it is Race to the Top funds and we are nearing the end of that funding, and waiting another month for approval would kind of delay when we can order the stuff and get it back in, and we have to make sure it's ordered and back in a timely manner, so that way we get that money encumbered and spent. And
But it's a continuation of what we're doing now.
it is, it basically is, you're purchasing writing resources for K2. School-wide writing fundamental units of study have a central mission to improve students writing by providing explicit instruction that focuses on demonstrating why writers write and how writers communicate their ideas effectively. The units use quality literature and informational text to provide authentic examples of various genres and text types. These resources will be used as a part of the core instructional writing program for K2 students throughout the district. And it's,
So sole source.
yes, and it's $50,000.
I would
$50,986.
move for approval.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Appreciate it.
Thank you, and I greatly appreciate it and apologize.
I want to hold up those second graders. Okay. Item L, Sundance Newbridge Publishing sole source resolution, Appendix X, Dawn Brinson.
Okay, now this is the appendix that was up twice. So request of the board approve the Sundance Newbridge sole source resolution. Again, this is Race to the Top funds for language arts resources.
Move for approval.
Second.
Questions? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Item N, Electronic Access Control and Database Management System, Appendix Y, Bill Hens.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, request that the board approve the electronic access for locks and the database system for the 18 schools listed.
Move for approval.
Second.
Questions?
Yeah, just one. Bill, where would you be controlling it from?
This would allow us to control it remotely. We could control them. It gives us the capability to enter people into the system and take them out of the system remotely, which we do not have at this point in time. And this will allow us to move forward and do that in continued replacement of locks.
So do you
throughout
have
the system.
cameras so that you can see someone?
This has the ability to have cameras integrated in it. Cameras are not part of this right now, but with some of the work that Dawn will do when we bring cameras into some of the systems, they can be integrated into this. This is an open hardware, open architecture system, and which will allow us to integrate those types of features in there and add features to it as we go along, and will allow us to grow as well.
Good. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Item O, Wrightsboro Elementary School floor and repairs, Appendix Z, Bill Hance.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I request that the board approve the floor refurbishment and replacement and repairs at Wrightsboro, second floor of Wrightsboro Elementary School.
Move for approval.
Questions?
Yeah, let me add, just a very quick one. You're replacing flooring. Are you putting any new wood down or anything like that?
We're replacing the underlayment, which is under the floor as well. We're replacing that underlayment piece, and we're putting down VCT on top of it. We're attaching the underlayment to the joists of the floor. So it is a replacement under the floor as well.
I just have well, I see it was in December. I mean, and I guess I'm kind of, this is water going over the bridge. It's probably already gone over the bridge. Why did we need an architect to replace flooring?
Well, we have to design it to the floor, attached to the floor joists underneath the floor.
Didn't already have floor joists?
Yeah, it had floor joists under there, but they're replacing the whole underlayment under the floor. So design is required, documents are required.
Just baffles me that what looks like routine maintenance, you know, it's like there's just this cottage industry that exists for things like heating and air conditioning and replacing flooring and putting in windows.
Isn't that a state requirement that it would be?
Yeah, I know it's a state
Yeah,
requirement, but I mean, you know, it just seems like a real cottage industry that you can't just go in and put in, you know, replace flooring.
Conspiracy.
You can do it, Say what? I'm sorry.
She said conspiracy.
It's a conspiracy.
I thought it's just a cottage industry.
Well, Ed, if somebody trips and falls on that floor, I want to make sure it was properly installed so that.
Well, they're probably
It's
denied.
not our fault.
They're denied, somebody denied it was their responsibility,
Yes.
but anyway. Okay, fine.
Any other questions or comments? All those in
Sounded like
favor,
a dare
please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Item P, interlocal agreement for services, Appendix AA, Bill Hance.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, request that the board approve the renewal of the interlocal agreement with the county. This is the maintenance of our lawns at all of our schools, not our athletic fields, just our lawns at our schools. And we've had an agreement with the county for 2 or 3 years to do this, and County Parks and Gardens does this work. And this is just the extension of the agreement.
Move for approval.
Second.
Mr. Shell, I know you have a question.
I do. I didn't see a dollar amount in there, so I'm assuming that that's up to the county to award the dollar amount.
That's correct. At the time when we initiated the initial agreement, we had an amount that we were allocating toward that with our own contract, and they took that over.
Okay.
That great benefit to
Because
us.
I served on that committee till you graciously wanted to serve on it, so I know you're gonna keep them straight over it. Parks and Gardens.
Yep.
Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Item Q, New Hanover High School painting, Appendix B, Bill Hance.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, request that the board approve the painting of the interior of New Hanover High School.
Move for approval.
Second.
Questions?
Yes, just briefly, what's the scope of work there? I mean, can you, just a little bit?
I'm sorry, yeah,
Talk
scope
about
of,
just briefly, the scope.
scope of work is the interior of the building, not the exterior of the building, and some areas were painted maybe a couple of years ago, but they only had one coat on them. So this is going back, taking care of all of that. It's also taking care of Princess Street Gym, which is peeling and spalling from the roof. It's going in and taking care of that. It's putting a primer coat on and then putting a regular coat on the paint. The hallways have been painted, but more recently than the classrooms, and so when you go from the hallways into the classrooms, it's a significant difference there. This will also allow an accent wall to be created. New Hanover doesn't have any access walls, and a lot of our other schools do have a little accent wall, so this will give them an accent wall in their classrooms as well.
Good, good. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Thank you. Item 13 on the agenda is our call to the audience of non-agenda items. We have 2 individuals that have signed up. And if you would, please stay in the 3-minute time frame that's allowed. Our first individual, Catherine Flax.
Good evening. My name is Katie Flax, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the girls' Ashley High School golf team. I'm one of 4 juniors who will be returning to play golf next year, our senior year. We recently got word that Coach Troy Presnell will not be allowed to return as Ashley's golf coach next year. Unfortunately, this means we are once again without a coach. A new coach would mean a 4th coach in our 4 years. This is very upsetting. For me and my teammates, being considered for scholarships or partial scholarships to play golf in college is something we have worked towards for many years. I firmly believe that the lack of consistency in coaching has held us back in a really very real way. It has only been under Coach Troy that I have begun to see tremendous improvements in all of our golf games. Even though, for me, the mental game held me back some this year, and I struggled with consistency, my technical game is much improved, as is all of the girls'. I believe these improvements are because of Coach Troy and the skills that he has taught us over the past year. Coach Troy was an amazing coach for us. There are several things that he set apart from other coaches we've had. First of all, he shows up. He was there for every practice and every match, except for the ones he was not allowed to attend because of this very wrong decision. Secondly, not only did he coach us, he actually taught us. His knowledge of the technical aspect of golf is tremendous. There's not even enough time to tell you all of his advice, but believe me, it was all beneficial. And finally, Coach Troy is extremely good with us when it comes to disappointments and frustrations on the course. He understood and was patient with us when we got very upset over a bad hole or bad shot and never got mad at us. Then he had a great way of getting us back on track and not letting that one moment affect the rest of our game. This was especially helpful during regionals and states when it was especially stressful. Not just because of the nature and difficulty of the tournament, but because we were all well aware of the circumstances surrounding Coach Troy, even though he did nothing to create that awareness, and the presence of our AD. That caused a very real stress for us and had a profound effect on our tournament performances. Last season, our team saw many successes, both on and off the golf course. If any of you had attended the fall sports banquet, you would have noticed that the girls' golf team was the only team that achieved conference tournament champions, not to mention our academic successes, which should be especially impressive since out of all the sports, we missed the most amount of school just due to the nature of the sport. We were all straight-A students, and most of us are taking AP classes, which makes it even more challenging to balance a very time-consuming sport and academics. We are some of the best. We are doing what you ask of us, and so we, the Ashley High School women's golf team, would like to ask something of you. Please reinstate Coach Troy as the golf coach of Ashley High School. Coach Troy is the best coach for this team. He wants to be there, even though we understand that he was treated extremely disrespectful by the administrations at the New Hanover County School Central Office. He has proven himself to be a good and dedicated coach to our team, one that actually takes an interest in us and shows up. Even though a reason has not been given to us as to why he is not being allowed to return, there have been a few assumptions to which Coach Troy has been very open to our parents about. My parents have told me that none of those reasons would prevent them from wanting him to coach me or this team, and believe me, I've grown up in a very G-rated home. If my parents had the least bit of concern about Coach Troy or my safety, they would do anything to keep him from coaching me. I don't want to know or understand the politics that goes on in this school system, but I believe that politics have played a large role in the decision to remove Coach Troy as our coach. Let me assure you, the only ones who suffer are us, the girls of the Ashley High School women's golf team. And why? All we've done is work our tails off both on the course.
You're well past your 3 minutes. Would you wrap it up, please?
Okay, yes. And it isn't our success, your success too. We deserve to have a voice and say so over who we feel is best to coach our team. Coach Troy Presnell is that coach. I know the easiest thing to do is to do nothing, but we are asking you to do the right thing and let us have our coach. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Emma Webster.
Hi, my name is Emma Webster, and I am a 6th grader at Murray Middle School. I have been circulating a petition to see if the high schoolers can be on a separate bus from the middle schoolers. I have 160 signatures from the 6th grade students, some teachers, and parents. The reasons supporting my argument are the first, overcrowding and time. I used to ride the bus, but now I don't because I, along with other kids, were left at the school in the afternoon because there weren't enough seats. Another day we were asked to get off at the school because we were the last stop and they would come back for us. Only the 6th graders got left behind. Another day, I was asked to get off the bus because I have a musical instrument that they thought was too big. When I was left at the school, I didn't get home until 4:45. I usually get home at 3:55 to 4 o'clock. That is 50 minutes that I could have been doing my homework. The next reason I have is age difference and safety. The high schoolers are much older, larger, and advanced mentally and physically. There are 18-year-olds on the same bus as 11-year-olds. This makes it easier for bullying to happen. The high schoolers take up much more room than the middle schoolers. They are usually larger kids, and there is less room on the bus. Many times, kids are hanging off the edge of the seat, and whenever the bus driver makes a turn, those kids will go flying into the seat next to them. I would call that a safety issue of its own. Possible solutions that I have thought of are you could, A, get more buses, you could, B, change the school dismissal schedule, or you could, C, separate the buses by schools. Please help the middle school and high school students be safe, comfortable, and happy with a change in the system. Thank you for having me speak.
Thank you.
No closed session.
Okay, next item, item 15, correspondence. Ms. Eastep, any correspondence you'd like to share? Anything? Ms. Coble? Mr. Shell? Ms. Kavanaugh? Mr. Higgins?
Nope.
No, thank you.
And no correspondence. All right, under announcements, item 16. Item A, the Uinta County Board of Education will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, April 21st, 2015 at 5:30 in this room concerning the budget. Item B, members of the Board of Education will participate in a compensation review committee meeting on Thursday, April 23rd, 2015, 9 a.m., room 101 of the Administration Building, 6410 Carolina Beach Road. Item C, the Policy Committee of the New Hanover County Board of Education will meet on Thursday, April 23rd, 10:30 a.m., room 101 of the Administration Building, 6410 Carolina Beach Road. Any other announcements anyone can think of?
Do we have a closed session?
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I meant to say.
One other-
We should have amended the agenda now.
Two announcements.
I move that we adjourn.
Wait, he's got an announcement.
Just two quick announcements. The annual superintendent and board art breakfast is coming up. The art exhibits are on the 3rd floor at the central office.
They're already out?
They are out. They went up today, so please stop by and check those out. And for those who are into a little physical fitness, our 3rd annual teacher trot, which is our wellness 5K, will take place May 2nd.
When was the first one?
Every year we have an annual breakfast where we recognize student art.
Yes.
And each board member is asked to select a piece of art, and it's one of the ones that stay here. And those pieces for selection are located right now on the 3rd floor of the central office building. So if you'll stop by and select the piece that you like the best.
Well, Dr. Markley, what would be the deadline for selecting them so that we know?
Not sure, I'll check, and either I, Ms. Adams, will give you a final date.
Okay, because they have to be framed,
Yep.
and so we need,
And when's the breakfast?
Well, that has been determined.
Oh, it hadn't.
Well, we'll get that date to you as well.
Okay.
This teacher trot, how far do you have to trot?
You can walk or run 3.1 miles.
3.1 miles for a 5K.
I might could trot.
I don't think, I know, I don't think you could trot it.
I
You might,
have a question, Mr. Chairman. The 4 new board members or recurring board members have to have ethics training within a certain amount of time. Is anyone else missing their ethics training besides me?
No.
Okay. Ms. Adams, can you find out by what time we have to have it and, okay.
You just let us know and then we'll.
Yeah, if you'll let us
You
know,
didn't get
we'll
yours
try and
either?
get together
You
and
did.
get it.
Yeah.
you did.
you gotta do it every 2 years.
Yeah, I
You have to
know
do it-
I've
you have
done
to do it
it.
after each election.
4
Every
years.
Yeah.
Every election.
4 years.
Yeah. I don't know that,
I did mine when I went to
Right,
School Board
training.
101.
okay.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, we are adjourned.